The city that defied the world. There are cities that are built by kings, and then there are cities that are built by time itself. For more than 1,000 years, one city stood at the center of the world, like a lock on the door of history. It watched empires rise, fall, and vanish into dust while it remained. Its walls were not just stone, they were memory, they were defiance, they were a challenge written in marble and iron. This city was Constantinople. It stood where two continents touched, where Europe leaned toward Asia, where the waters of the Bosphorus carried the wealth of the Black Sea into the heart of the Mediterranean. Whoever controlled this city did not merely rule a kingdom. They controlled the bloodstream of civilization itself. To the Christian world, it was the last living shadow of Rome. To the Muslim world, it was something more. It was a promise, a city spoken of not only in chronicles and maps, but in the words of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, himself. Words that would echo across centuries, across dynasties, across generations of warriors who would stand beneath its walls and look up at stone that seemed to touch the sky. You will conquer Constantinople. What a wonderful leader will that leader be, and what a wonderful army will that army be. This was not heard as poetry. It was heard as destiny, and destiny, when left unfulfilled, becomes a burden carried by history. The walls that mocked empires. For centuries, the city dared the world to try. The Umayyad armies came first. They crossed deserts and seas, carrying banners of faith and ambition. They camped beneath the walls and prayed for victory. Winter broke them. Stone defeated them. They returned home with stories of a city that refused to fall. The Abbasids followed. So did sultans, generals, and caliphs, whose names would be carved into history elsewhere. But not here. Because Constantinople was not protected by soldiers alone. It was protected by architecture that seemed almost supernatural. 3 layers of towering walls, moats that swallowed siege towers, towers that could rain death on attackers from every angle. And at the harbor, the great iron chain across the Golden Horn, an unbreakable barrier that had stopped fleets for centuries. The city became a legend, not for what it was, but for what it resisted. To the world, it was untouchable. To the Muslim imagination, it was unfinished. And with every failed attempt, the prophecy grew heavier. It passed from father to son, from teacher to student, from sultan to prince, until, in the 15th century, it reached a boy who would refuse to let it remain a dream. The prince raised for a promise. In the year 1432, in the Ottoman capital of Edirne, a child was born into a world shaped by war and prophecy. His name was Mehmed, but he was not raised like other princes. His teachers did not train him merely to rule an empire. They trained him to fulfill a sentence spoken 8 centuries before his birth. He memorized the Quran. He studied the lives of the great commanders of Islam. He learned Arabic, Persian, Latin, and Greek. He studied mathematics, astronomy, engineering, and law. But above all, he studied the city. Maps of Constantinople were laid before him like sacred texts. He learned the shape of its walls, the depth of its waters, the flow of its trade, and the psychology of its defenders. His mentors did not ask him what kind of sultan he wanted to be. They asked him if he believed he could be the one. When he became sultan at the age of 21, Europe saw a boy on a throne. History saw something far more dangerous. A believer with a vision, a world holding its breath. Constantinople in the mid-15th century was no longer the empire it once had been. The Byzantine realm had shrunk to little more than the city itself and a few scattered territories. Its population was fading. Its treasury was thin. Its allies were distant and divided, but its walls still stood. And walls, in the language of geopolitics, can be more powerful than armies. Mehmed understood something his enemies did not. This would not be a war of numbers. It would be a war of systems. He did not rush toward the city. He closed his hand around it. He built a massive fortress on the Bosphorus, cutting off Constantinople from the Black Sea. No grain could pass. No reinforcements could arrive. The city became an island in a sea of Ottoman territory. Then he did something no ruler before him had done. He summoned engineers instead of generals, and they gave him a weapon that would change the nature of war forever: the Great Cannon. Mehmed commissioned a weapon that would become the stuff of legend. A cannon so large it seemed impossible, its barrel longer than a man is tall, its mouth wide enough to swallow a soldier whole. It was forged by a Hungarian master, a man who had never seen the city in person, but whose mind could imagine walls as clay to shape and stone to break. The cannon arrived on the Golden Horn, and with it came a new kind of fear. For centuries, Constantinople had laughed at siege engines, proud of walls that had repelled empires. Now, the sound of Mehmed's cannon shook those same stones, echoing across the Bosphorus, rattling the city's towers, and announcing that the age of invincibility was over. The city had withstood countless assaults. It had never faced something like this. And yet Mehmed knew, cannon alone would not win the city. Victory required patience, strategy, and the discipline of an army that believed in prophecy as much as in steel. The siege begins. In the spring of 1453, Mehmed's army arrived at the gates of Constantinople. It was not a mere army. It was a force of 80,000 men, a mixture of cavalry, infantry, and engineers. They were supported by artillery teams, elite janissaries, and supply lines stretched across the Ottoman lands. The city had fewer than 7,000 defenders. Soldiers, monks, and civilians alike stood behind walls that had never been breached. For days, Mehmed's cannons roared, stones splintered, towers shook. The Byzantines counterattacked, repairing walls, fighting fiercely from the battlements, and hoping for relief that would never come. Mehmed's strategy was patient. He rotated his forces. He reinforced weak points. He built tunnels to undermine walls. He attacked day and night, forcing defenders to exhaust themselves. Every strike was calculated, every siege tower positioned with precision. The boy who became sultan had studied this moment his entire life. History watched, and the world held its breath, breaching the impossible. After weeks of bombardment, the walls of Constantinople began to crack. The mighty Theodosian walls, which had laughed at every army for 1,000 years, were no longer untouchable. Stone shattered under the relentless pounding of Mehmed's cannons. Siege towers moved closer, slowly encroaching on the city's gates. But the defenders did not yield. They repaired, reinforced, and resisted with every ounce of their strength. Every tower held a story, every gate a legacy. Mehmed, standing on the plains outside the city, understood that brute force alone would not win this conquest. His army dug tunnels, scaled ladders, and coordinated attacks with precision, testing the city's defenses and forcing the Byzantines to stretch their few men across every possible weak point. The siege became a game of patience and ingenuity. Every day the walls creaked under pressure. Every night the city prayed for relief that would not arrive. Destiny, as foretold centuries before, was inching closer. The final assault, on the morning of May 29th, 1453, Mehmed ordered the final push. The city's walls had been weakened by weeks of cannon fire and constant pressure. Every gate, every tower, every wall that had once seemed invincible now bore cracks, fractures, and signs of strain. Mehmed's army advanced with careful precision. Engineers guided siege towers, janissaries prepared ladders, and the Sultan himself oversaw the operation from a vantage point, ensuring every move was calculated. Inside the city, defenders fought desperately to hold the line, knowing that the fate of their empire rested on these walls. Civilians helped wherever they could, reinforcing barricades and carrying supplies. The battle was a test of endurance, discipline, and strategy. Not a single strike was random. Every attack, every placement of artillery, every maneuver was the result of months of preparation and study. And then the walls gave way. A breach opened, and Constantinople's fate, foretold centuries before, began to unfold. The fall of Constantinople. As the Ottoman forces entered through the breached walls, the city that had stood for over 1,000 years began a new chapter. Mehmed walked through the gates, not as a conqueror seeking vengeance, but as a sultan fulfilling a centuries-old prophecy. The streets, the palaces, and the great churches of Constantinople bore witness to a transformation that would reshape the world. The Hagia Sophia, the jewel of the city, was among the first to be honored and repurposed. Its domes and minarets would stand as a symbol of a new era, bridging two continents, two civilizations, and two faiths under the Ottoman Empire. The prophecy had been fulfilled. The leader was as extraordinary as foretold, and the army had proven its discipline, skill, and faith. Constantinople was no longer just a city. It had become a legend, a turning point in history, and a testament to preparation, vision, and destiny. From that day forward, the gates of Europe and Asia opened to a sultan whose ambition and determination would echo for centuries. The legacy of Mehmed. Mehmed II, now known as Mehmed the Conqueror, did not stop at victory. He rebuilt the city, repopulated it, and encouraged people of all faiths to make Constantinople their home. Christians, Jews, and Muslims alike found a place in the thriving new capital. Trade routes reopened. Scholars, artisans, and merchants arrived from across the Ottoman world, bringing knowledge, skill, and wealth. The Hagia Sophia became a mosque, but its grandeur remained, symbolizing the continuity of culture and history. Bridges, roads, and aqueducts were repaired. Palaces and markets rose from the rubble. Constantinople became Istanbul, the heart of an empire that would span 3 continents. The conquest fulfilled prophecy, yes, but it also demonstrated timeless truths. Preparation, strategy, faith, and leadership can change the course of history. A young sultan, guided by vision and determination, had turned destiny into reality. And the world would remember the fall of Constantinople not only as an event, but as a lesson. The greatest cities can fall, the greatest walls can be breached, and the smallest actions, when combined with faith and strategy, can reshape the world forever. Destiny fulfilled. The conquest of Constantinople was more than a military victory. It was the fulfillment of a prophecy spoken centuries before. It was the triumph of vision, preparation, and unwavering belief. Mehmed II did not simply take a city, he reshaped the balance of the world, linking continents, cultures, and faiths under a single empire. The prophet's words had come to life. A great leader and a remarkable army, guided by destiny and effort, had accomplished what generations before had only dreamed of. History remembers Constantinople not only as a fallen city, but as a testament to what can be achieved when faith, knowledge, and strategy align. And for the generations that followed, the story served as a reminder. No matter how impregnable a wall may seem, preparation, patience, and vision can turn prophecy into reality.